Welcome everybody to another edition of Gory Stories. In today's edition, we're going to talk about the story of Craig. He only wanted more. Are you ready to get down with this?
I am ready.
All right, let's do it. In the 1950s and 60s, things were a little bit different than they are today.
Most people took you by your word, or by the amount of knowledge you appeared to demonstrate about a certain interest or topic.
That being the case, Craig, with his higher than average ability to silver-tongue his way through any conversation, could persuade people to believe anything that he thought would give him an upper hand in whatever the topic.
This was also the case in 1953 when he met his 18-year-old wife Shannon. She had become pregnant also that year, but the story takes a swift turn for the worst as Craig is in prison for the theft in the same year. Out of embarrassment, his wife put the baby up for adoption and dissolved their marriage, and his family no longer wanted anything to do with him. He was locked up, out of luck, and nowhere to go.
Once released, he moved to Kansas, where he later took a job as a driver for a wealthy business owner that, despite his personal success in photography, was also in charge of taking restitution from retail and residential tenants in which his parents owned.
Craig became bored and felt he was beyond this lifestyle. He then began a business scheme as a stockbroker, but was later arrested and sentenced to years in prison again for fraud.
During his stay in prison, he found the process of melting bones and tissue with sulfuric acid, which is used in a diluted form in automobile batteries. Automobile batteries are diluted by 30-40%, where Craig, by way of manipulating the other prisoners to bring him products, was experimenting with 100% acid. He would try this experiment on rats and leftover chicken bones from the kitchen. Given the results he was achieving,
he devised a plan of all plans. In his mind, there would be no murder without a body for evidence, and if the acid took away the body, he could therefore get away with murder.
In 1954, Craig was finally released from prison, and he found employment as an accountant, but by happenstance soon ran into his old boss from the photography developing. He described his life since leaving his employment as invigorating and full of accomplishments in the engineering field. His former boss and he became friends, and Vincent Pratt even introduced Craig to his
parents and kept very close ties with them. Craig convinced his former boss to become a business partners in a joint venture. During the signing of all the partnership agreements, it allowed Craig to have survivorship rights in company dealings. Vincent began inquiring about the progress of the venture. Craig invited him to view the progress. They walked into the basement of a dilapidated building.
Sounds creepy. Vincent began getting agitated with his surroundings. Craig assured him he would be grateful in the end as he led him further into the basement. At the end of the hall was a lit workstation, only the size of a desk with a trash container next to it. They walked toward the desk, his partner staring at him as he walked with a sudden look of disdain.
Vincent says,
"What have you brought me all the way down here to show me a desk?"
And Craig says, "No, look in the top right drawer. You're gonna love it."
"You had better hope so. I'm pulling the plug on this operation. Who do you think you're dealing with?"
As he walks over to the drawer, Craig lets him get to the desk ahead of him. He walks to the left and pulls a metal bar from the shelf. As Vincent turns to reveal the empty drawer, Craig slams the rod against his skull, looking around to make certain no one has witnessed the event. He then turns his attention to going forward with the plan he came up with in prison.
He put all the thought into achieving his goal of getting the ingredients needed to dissolve the body. He made the fake engineering company in order to be eligible to purchase the sulfuric acid. He made certain that there was a sewer drain to get rid of the dissolved tissue. However, he failed to obtain a chemical vat large enough to take the large frame man.
Craig underestimated the vat size by several gallons. It was large enough for the amount of acid needed to dissolve him. However, he did not allow for the man himself. Fortunately, he had thought to get a backup vat of the same size. That left only one problem. Yep, you guessed it. How to get one man into two separate vats.
He sat and thought about putting him in a little at a time. However, this would cause the vat to overflow and leaving tissue matter all over the floor. Craig, standing over his former boss, looking him up and down with his open eyes,
he asked aloud, "Are you really dead? Have you left the body yet?"
He thinks to himself, is he hovering above me, looking at him? What will the penalties be in afterlife? As he thinks of all this, he can't seem to stop looking at his former employer's eyes. He still looks so alive. How can you just not be anymore? I don't know. You have to be somewhere. You can't just not be.
These thoughts start to enrage him. He touches the face of his victim, and it begins to be evident that Vincent is no longer in his body and may very well be hovering above him. Craig looks above him and states aloud, "You may want to leave the room. I'm not sure how the rest of this will go." Craig reaches in the drawer of the desk, pulls out a rubber rain boots, gloves, rain jacket, and trousers. He slings a leather apron over his head and ties the strap behind his back. The whole time he is getting dressed, he is looking at the face of his victim. He reaches down and puts his thumb and forefinger on each of the eyes and pushes them closed. He reaches back into the desk and pulls out a long gas mask. Craig comes up with a plan to put half of the man in one vat hanging over into the second vat, but that would leave only enough acid for half in each. Would that be enough to dissolve his victim? He can't chance it. He devises a second plan, one that would cause him to do something he is not sure he is capable of. The whole reason for the vats is to secure a clean and evident free crime scene. Craig pulls at the man attempting to get him into the vat. However, the man is too large for him to pick up, and even if he could, it doesn't appear the vat is large enough. He runs out to the tool shed, returns carrying several items: a hammer, a shovel, a tree limb saw, and an axe. He lays the man flat on the floor. As he flops flat on the ground, the large man wobbles back and forth, only twice, but it seemed like a regained life to Craig. He panics. He picks up the axe, taking guard over the man, but the man doesn't move. He sets all the tools in a row, looks them over. He takes the shirt off the man. Feeling uncomfortable, he lays the shirt over his breast and belly. He takes a knife from the tools and goes to the shoulder. He cuts at the arm, but it's too dull to get through the muscle. He tears at the arm with a knife. Blood is flowing from the cut. He begins to feel queasy. Craig looks away, putting his mouth on his shoulder, attempting not to vomit. He stands up, turns his attention to the tree saw, picking it up, going to the cut. He pulls the saw back and pushes forward, but the saw sticks. He picks it up, pulls it again. It sticks as he attempts to go forward. The bone is too dense, he thinks to himself. He hovers over the man, looks over the tools. He picks up the axe, then looks at the man again before slamming the axe down on his shoulder. He pulls the arm thinking it is loose, but the skin and muscle is still holding it on. He picks the dull knife back up, as it is the only option. He pulls at the skin, with it pulling back and forth until the arm is loose. He places the arm in the vat, wipes the blood from his goggles, and picks up the axe. He swings at the neck, the head jump, opening the eyes of the head, now hanging by muscle and skin. Craig holds the hair of his victim and tears at the skin until it's finally loose from the neck. He holds it up looking at it. He closes the eyes and throws it into the vat. He shakes with goosebumps as he thinks of the deed he has done. "I have no choice," he says to himself, as he continues until the man is split between the two vats. He ensures the gas mask is in place and begins to fill the vats with acid. He cleaned the entire area of the evidence and covered the vats with a tarp. Craig convinces his former boss's parents that he had to leave the country in order to avoid the authorities in a tax matter that he had before mentioned to Craig, and fortunately, the parents had been aware of the tax matter but unaware of the severity of it. Craig soon began collecting for the family, taking responsibility previously performed by his victim. After a period of time, the family had entrusted him to be part of the business and being partnered in several ventures. At some point, the parents began looking for their son through the works of private investigation. Once Craig heard of this, he told them he had been in contact with him and would be returning within a month or so. They canceled all inquiries, thinking he would be returning soon. Craig moved all of his acid products and materials to a new location at one of the properties. He led the man of the house into the basement where all the items had been stored, and he instructed him to look at the barrel that was open. The barrel was not marked or appeared to be empty. He turned to Craig and complained, and Craig hit him square in the skull with the same metal rod he had used to kill his son. He lay the man face up, leaning him against the barrel. Craig runs to his wife and instructs her to come help, that the man had fallen and asked for her. They both hurry to the basement area. She sees her husband and hurries past Craig. She leans to help her husband when Craig darts to the corner, grabbing the rod, whacking her in the back of the head. They lie on the floor, not moving. Craig begins to get dressed in chemical suit. Suddenly, he hears moaning coming from the pile of humans that lie on the floor. He is confused by the sound. He suddenly realizes he doesn't know who the moaning is coming from. He grabs the lady by her hair, picks her up, looks her in the face. The moaning gets louder, but not coming from the head in his hand. He pokes at the man lying underneath the lady, and the skin still pliable and warm. He rushes for the rod, turns and sees the man's eyes open and look at him. A look of concern and fear in the eyes as he gets closer. The moaning gets louder. Suddenly, he thrusts the rod in the man's skull once. Another moan. He lifts the rod and drops it again on the skull, and again. Craig jumps back and realizes he's gone too far. He picks up the torso of the lady that is light, and he is able to lift to the barrel opening. He reaches for the man, but finds that he is too heavy to pick up and put into the barrel. He thinks to himself, if I'm going to have to cut this guy in more than half to get him into this barrel, he comes up with an idea. He turns the barrel over, puts it at the man's head, and tries to slide the man into the barrel. However, every time he pushes the man to the barrel, it goes forward. He puts the barrel against the wall and pulls the man's head into the barrel. He works the torso into the barrel, but the legs are hanging out. It takes all of Craig's strength and willpower to stand the barrel up with the man inside. He folds the legs, trying to get them into the barrel, but there's no way. He looks at the axe, remembers the mess that it made, and still he had to cut away at the flesh. He pulls at one of the legs until he hears a snap, breaking the bone of the leg. It still takes a struggle to get the leg into the barrel. He pulls again at the other leg until it also snaps. He stands over the barrel thinking that the worst is over. He straps the gas mask over his face. He pours the acid over the man until the barrel is full. Only a small section of the man's foot is sticking out. He walks to the other barrel and opens the acid. He pours the acid in the barrel when suddenly the lady starts screaming. He pours as fast as he can as she thrashes in the acid. He takes the axe he had just in case and holds the lady's face under the acid until the struggle had stopped. He feels a burning sensation on his head. He quickly pulls the glove off and reaches for the burning. He feels his head and looks at his hand where a clump of hair is now. The burning continues. He runs for the sink and puts his head under the water. He returned to the barrel and notices the acid had turned red and he can no longer make out the faces of his victims. He continues on a daily basis to take care of the business and convinces the banks and staff that the family had gone on an extended vacation and left him in charge. Showing them the business agreement he had with the son, they had no reason to not believe him. This went on for some time as he attempted to drain the banking account and transfer the properties to himself. On the third month of the disappearance, a young lady comes into the office on a Monday morning. All of the staff were happy to see this young lady. Craig walks over to a receptionist and asks, "Who is this?" "Let me introduce you to Sam. I'm sorry, Samantha Pratt. She is Vincent's sister." "You didn't know he had a sister?" "She's been away doing missionary work for the past year or so." Sam looks up at Craig. "I don't think we've met. Who are you exactly?" "Excuse me, ma'am. My name is Craig. I've been in the business with your brother for a while." Sam looks away, uninterested with anything else to do with business. "Where's my mom and dad? I've been calling them all last week. No answer and no return call." Craig tries to answer her with a story about an extended vacation. She ignores him. She continues to talk to the receptionist. The receptionist walks up behind her and tells her they are in Paris on an extended vacation. They haven't told me they were going. Mom knows I've always wanted to go, and she wouldn't let Dad take her without me. What's really going on here? Craig approaches her again. She stops him with her hand. Who are you again? Please don't talk to me like you know me. Sam turns back to the receptionist. I went to the house, and Dad's medicine is out of date. This doesn't feel right. I'm calling the police. Craig overhears her and calls for her to come to his office. He has some information for her. She looks at him and said, I don't know you, and I'm not comfortable with strangers. I understand. However, a friend is someone you haven't met, aka a stranger. She walks to his office. He gets up and says to her, follow me. I have something to show you that might help. They go to the elevator, and she follows him hesitantly. He hits the button labeled B. She looks at his face, trying to read his intent. The elevator stops, and he walks out. She follows from a distance. He notices this. He begins to speed up a little before she backs out. He points to the desk in a dark corner with nothing more than a dim light over the seated area of a desk. This is where your father was spending a lot of his time just before they left in a hurry. She rushes over to the desk and opens the top drawer, which is empty. She opens the next drawer, and inside is a hatchet and a couple of knives. I don't know what he would be doing with these, she says, as she looks back and notices Craig reaching for a steel rod. As he turns around, she hits him on the side of the head with the hatchet. Where's my parents, you son of a bitch? He drops the rod and reaches for the hatchet in his face. She grabs one of the knives as he attempts to pull his hatchet out. He pulls it, spinning around in a circle. She watches in horror. He finally gets the hatchet out. He walks toward her, holding the hatchet in his hand. She waves the knife toward him as he pushes forward. She lunges and pushes the knife into his abdomen. He swings the hatchet but misses. Sam walks backward, not taking her eyes off him. She trips over something lying on the ground. He stands over her. You should have stayed where you were, under that rock. He lifts the hatchet to finish her when suddenly blood starts running down his face. He drops the hatchet and falls to his knees. He then falls to his side, revealing the receptionist with the steel rod in her hands. I never trusted that guy, she says.
All right, Misty, so you finished the story. What did you think?
Very interesting.
Interesting.
Yes. This guy is crazy.
He is.
Well, I guess all murderers are crazy. But, yeah, I mean, okay, let's kind of start in the beginning. Like, in 1953, he had met a wife at 18 years old. She got pregnant. And he went to prison. And back then, you were kind of ashamed of your spouse going to prison. And so she divorced him and gave up the baby because she probably knew, honestly, she couldn't raise the baby by herself. So she did the baby a favor, I'm sure.
Well, it's a different time back then. That's when they...
Yes, but as a single mom, it's hard to raise a child, and I could see where she felt like she was incapable of raising a child by herself. And then having to explain her father is in prison. He's confused, and he's kind of taken back on what he just did. Like, I really just took this person's life. And then he's like, I know you have to be somewhere. You can't just be not anywhere anymore.
No, that experience comes from truly, in fact, taking your life and then having remorse about it.
You just say it came from experience?
Yes.
From your experience?
It was my experience.
You took someone's life? Is there
Took
something we
life.
need to...
Not someone's life, a life. And it goes back to deer hunting and literally shot a deer and then you're looking at these eyes open and you literally are wondering, is this animal deceased? Is their soul left their body, or...
Are they gonna come back and haunt me?
Well, that is a thought. I mean, it all goes through your mind. It's something that I personally never want to experience again. It was dramatic, and that was 30 years ago, and it still haunts me today. So,
Oh,
You many men say what you want to say. I'm just saying.
Well,
that,
killing it, I don't think I could kill a deer.
I don't ever want to do it again.
Not on purpose.
So, unless we're starving, the zombies takes over, it won't happen again. As long as there's Kroger and warehouse, we're good.
There's no more warehouse groceries.
I know. That's why I stopped at warehouse. So, what do you think about Sam? Sam coming back in the picture. I don't think anybody had a clue she was going to be around.
I know, and I'm glad that the reception lady
Sam's
came.
a little snotty girl. But
She
she's tough as nails.
just thinks her poop don't stink.
She does. But I mean, you know, she's a good girl. She's at the missionary. She's helping with the church.
Yeah, well, and she doesn't know this Craig guy, so
She does not know Craig.
She probably has to have an attitude because her family has been rich probably her whole life, and she's always had friends that tried to become friends with her because she had money, and so she's probably always had to have that wall up.
I think she was just. It seemed as though she was upset that her parents went to Paris and didn't take her.
Well, yeah, I
like,
would be.
What my mama thinking?
Yeah, but then I mean, she knew. She's smart. She knew that something wasn't right.
So how do you think? What do you think was going through her head as she put the hatchet in Craig's head?
Oh, she was scared to death.
Think she was scared? It was just a fear reaction, or do you think maybe
That was the
she's
adrenaline that came over.
or she is?
But does she
messed up
know
as he
that
is.
he killed all three of the brother and the parents? Does she know that at this point?
But she might have a clue now that he tried to whack her. But
Right. But I think it's just that adrenaline. Somebody's coming after you. So, oh my gosh, I gotta survive. So let's kill this dude. Or at least let me be able to run out.
her guard was definitely up. Okay, so what were some more thoughts that you had on the story?
Okay, so as the truck goes by, so when he met his former boss, Vincent Pratt,
yeah.
was that something he wanted to do? Because, okay, my thought process is he was in prison. How in the world would he even know that acid would do this to bones? Because we didn't have Google back then. So how would he even figure that out unless somebody taught him long time ago that acid will kill you in a way, disintegrate your bones. But while he was in prison, did he have a beef with Vincent Pratt? Because apparently he'd been thinking about this whole scenario while he was in prison. So did he have beef with Vincent and he wanted to meet him, or was it just he just wanted to try it on somebody and Vincent was the unlucky one?
Well, you know, he wanted to take over someone's life. He wanted someone that was successful, someone that he might have looked up to, someone that he admired, and something that, you know, in those days it was more along the lines of keeping up with the Joneses, and you know,
Right.
he did squander several fortunes, and that's in reality. But I would have to feel that it was just someone that he wanted to take their life from. When I say not just kill them, I mean literally take over their life, and he basically did by becoming business partners with him.
But he wanted to meet back up with Vincent. So was he trying to be at the same place as he was, or in your mind, did he just, because it was a former boss,
Well, I have to
and
be
he knew
honest with
that
you,
he was well off?
That idea came from the original story, so I didn't put a lot of thought into it, but I would have to assume that you are correct in that he was just trying to take over the life that he perceived as successful.
Because he wanted to be
He
Vincent
wanted
Pratt.
he wanted to be someone besides Craig.
Oh yeah, I think I would have wanted to also.
Well, I don't know. I don't think there's much going on up there in the way of Craig.
Well, I mean, I think he was he was an intelligent person to come up with these ideas, but
Well,
they
you
were just
had-
the wrong ideas.
Right, but I mean, and to keep up with the social structure that he wanted to identify with, he had to, you know, become intelligent, not really intelligent, but versed in the conversations that he would have to be having with the social status that he was in.
Yeah.
So what do you think overall? So think about this for a second. He killed. All right. So the true murderer was John Hay. All right. So John Hay, he actually killed his former employer, took over his life basically, and then did kill his parents. It wasn't Vincent Pratt. I don't really recall what their names were, and then he squandered all the money that he had collected from those murders. You should watch the documentary. And then he went on to do it to another family.
Oh, wow.
Before he was caught, yes.
A whole nother family.
A whole nother family. So he claims 9. They know of 6.
So what?
The evidence is gone. It's down the drain. And they had a sewer system. He lived in the city of London, and they had a sewer system that ran underneath the city.
So he could have killed the whole family and nobody would have ever known they were missing.
No, but I do think, like today, you have to show for your use of chemicals of that nature. Back then, you had to have the ability to purchase them.
Yes, but back then, I mean, he said he had an engineering business, so he was able to get it.
He was a fraudster.
Yes, he was a liar.
Let me go back. All right, so thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen, and join us next week for another edition of Gory Story. So we'll have another rendition of another horror that taken place somewhere, and then we'll try to put our thoughts into their thoughts and make thoughts.
And we'll have a lot of thoughts.
We'll have a lot of thoughts. Send us your thoughts and inquiries, and we love hearing from you. Thanks, guys.
Bye.